everyone, and welcome to the S word, singleness. My name is Aldrika Everett. I am 27 years old. I am single. I'm a graduate from the University of Florida. I am currently pursuing a master's in marriage and family therapy. And of course, I work here at Greenhouse Church, and I'm with my friend,
Brooke. So my name is Brooke. I am 32 years old. I am also single, and I went to UF, so I graduated from UF. That's what brought me to Gainesville. The community here is what kept me here. I'm on staff here. I'm the youth director here at Greenhouse, and we were super excited when we were told that we're going to talk on singleness. And why was that?
Yes, well, so we know that you all have probably seen lots of teachings. You've read lots of books about dating and waiting and all those different things. So what we've done is we've compiled a lot of that information, but what we wanted to do that's a little bit different is to deviate from the norm of those conversations. We wanted to discuss how real it's been for us, how hard it's been, the struggle, the stigma, the search, but then also reaching a place of contentment. So Brooke is going to lead us today with week 1 of the S word.
Yeah, so we called it the S word. We were going back and forth on this title because when you hear anyone say even like the S word, immediately you're like, oh, what are you talking about? But that's how we feel when people talk about singleness in some ways, is they don't even want to say the word single. Like it comes with this stigma of it's bad, don't say that word. Even when we introduce ourselves, you don't usually ever introduce yourself as someone who is single. You know, if you're married, it's like, hey, I'm married, but we just introduce ourselves as two single women, which isn't something you usually see. And so we're going to talk a little bit about these kind of stigmas that come along with that.
So why, Brooke, why do you think that there are stigmas associated with singleness?
So I think singleness is viewed as, it's very shameful in some ways. I don't think people see the opportunities in it. So here's an example. Here's a story I can think of. So because of quarantine, I have gotten into Monopoly again. Do you like Monopoly?
No.
You should play with us one night. So I haven't played in years, but I started playing Monopoly again. And if you're familiar with Monopoly at all, you know that the first piece on Monopoly is like the brown property. Yeah. So I don't know if you remember it. So it's the first one. If someone lands on there, they only pay you like $2 or $4. So you're kind of like, it's a waste. What property do you think people want in Monopoly most times?
Is it Park Place?
Yes, see, okay. Park Place. And that's the last one. So Park Place is the blue property, and that's like the most expensive. When you land on the brown one, most people don't want it. But here's the thing. If you land on the brown one and it costs the least amount of money to actually build hotels, you could actually start building quicker than anyone else could build. Like you could start building up your properties before anyone else can. Where if you land on Park Place, it takes a while to build that up. And so what ends up happening is if you do get the brown card, it's actually an opportunity. People look at the brown card like, oh, that's a setback. That's gonna hold me back. But if you play the card right, it's an opportunity. I say that because that's what happens with singleness. If we actually use our singleness the right way, it's an opportunity for us to be able to do something with that. And I think a lot of times, and it's kind of the theme of it, is people think that singleness is a setback, when really what we would say singleness is an opportunity, and we have to start looking at those opportunities. So yes, that's where I think it would come in.
So with that, why do you think that this matters for us? Why do we need to have this conversation as a church, as single women, as single men? Why is this important to us in the current times that we live in?
If we don't recognize the opportunities that we have, then we're going to miss out on the giftings. Like we're going to miss out. I mean, take the Monopoly thing. If you don't recognize the opportunity you have to build, you're going to miss out on the money they could give you. You're going to miss out, like you're missing out. And so we have to recognize this, and we have to hear it differently. Like if you're single, we've heard it before. This isn't a whole new concept we just brought to you. We've heard the saying that singleness is a gift. And so I think our goal is to kind of unpack that gift, right? So.
Yes. So why do you think that we have kind of switched into this place of seeing singleness as a problem?
I think culture. Culture is the problem. We've bought into the lie that if we're not with someone, we're incomplete. And what I mean by culture is if you even think about any movie you've ever seen, you have the happily ever after. You have the perfect ending. And between every plot, even though there's some plot of something they're doing, there's always a love story in that. And there's always that couple, there's always that. And so now we believe if our story doesn't have someone that we love or a different like person that's completing it, then we are incomplete. Gotcha. It's like we're incomplete. I was hoping if it, but I do think that's how we feel. We feel incomplete if we don't have that person. And it's because it's not just culture. I mean, like, it's not just movies and culture, but even at your job, I would say, like, if that's happened to you at school, if you don't have someone else that is with you, then you think that you're missing out. Like, you feel like if I don't have that other person, then I can't do this. Like, I don't know if you've ever had that feeling before, but like, I'm not going to be able to go to the next phase of my life. That's how I've looked at it. Like, I can't phase out to the next part of my life because I'm not married yet. And when I am, then I could do this. And we've written the wrong story. And I think it's because ever since the beginning, we have been writing the wrong stories. Like, think about Eve when she was in the garden. Like, she wrote the story of, if I don't eat from this tree that I know I'm not supposed to eat from, then I'm going to miss out. And that's what singleness is, essentially. This fear of missing out. Like, I think it's this fear, like, if I don't do this, then I'm going to miss out. So
I also think that along with the feeling of missing out, there's also the part of, with Eve, like, not having enough. Like, she literally had an entire garden to choose from, but that was that one thing that she didn't have, so she must be missing something. She must not have enough because she doesn't have that thing.
Yeah, that's so, and that's how we feel. That's how singles, I think, feel enough. Like, I don't have that one thing. I don't have enough. And we're going to dig into that, I think, even further as we go into this. But the theme is, like, the idea we want you to get is that we want you to start rewriting your own story, because if we don't, we're going to keep on looking at singleness as a setback when really it's an opportunity.
Right. So how do we transition out of this, like, deficit mindset? How do we change this attitude? What culture has taught us? How do we undo this?
Well, I think before we could actually go forward in what we've been talking about, we have to actually start to look back. And so we need to go into the history of this and where did this idea of dating even come from? And so even when we look at it, I mean, there's not a lot of things that you find about it biblically, because back then dating was a lot different than what it is now. And even for us as Christians, we're always constantly going to the Bible. We're trying to figure out what God has to say about this. And so I know for me, I wanted to know, okay, where is the history of this? And so even back in the day, the history of dating it wasn't for self. It was actually the parents were trying to find someone for their daughter or son to marry, because it was about their tribe. It was about their family. It was about their clan. And we're looking at even Jewish culture. It's the same thing. When the Bible was written, back in the day, they didn't even meet their wife until their wedding day. So there wasn't this dating. So when we're trying to go to the Bible and look to that and look to what the season of singleness looked like, it's just a lot different. And even culturally, it wasn't until the Middle Ages that we start to see this marriage for love. It's when it started to become romanticized in some ways, and it was romantic. And even before that, you were still only doing arranged marriages if you were in the upper class. But other than that, people were starting to look around. And then you get into the 19th century. And in the 19th century, women were starting to transition into what they would do, like a calling, and they would try to call for their mate. And it's a little bit different now when we think about it. And they were starting to enter into the workforce. And there was still a lot of things going on with women, where women were getting paid less, and it was like kind of the man's job to support. And this whole idea of dating, I mean, the term date was actually referred to prostitution. And so that's not where we are anymore. So we're not in this prostitution state. But you get in the early 20th century, and then people are starting to date now. And when New York City started to become urbanized, and you don't have places where people are meeting in public areas, dating started to actually become private. That's when it became a private thing. And you have people who are now not dating with their family's approval, but it's who they want to date. They're looking out for the person that they want to be dating with. And then you have the beginning of the entertainment between magazines that are being pulled out and how they're portraying dating. And then when you're starting to get TV, that's kind of when it just completely skyrocketed. And that's when dating kind of spread on the economic ladder, per se. So the romance was now disconnected from the family. It was a very private thing. And it was closed off from your parents' approval is what you wanted. And we would even say now that we're kind of past the dating phase culturally. Unfortunately, that's not like, we aren't looking to date people to then get married, but kind of it's reverse, where what we're doing now is we're starting with sex. The prize is now we start with sex. If the sex is good, then maybe I'll date them, maybe not. And there's not even really a term for this yet, but it's not dating. And so when we're kind of looking at it culturally, that's just another thing that's added onto even us, like, oh, well, we're missing out. We're not even just missing out when it comes to job, but it's like, oh, well, I mean, Christians, you know it, like, well, I can never have sex now. And it's this constant feeling of I'm just always missing out on something. And culture has had such this influence that the stigma that has been put on singleness is, how can singleness be a good thing? And I remember me as like a single lady who I'm still am single. I've asked myself that question before, like rolled my eyes at people that would say like, it's okay to be single. But it doesn't ever feel okay because everyone's goal in mind is like, well, eventually you'll find that guy, you know, like it never felt okay. Like, what if this is it? What if it is just singleness? Can I be content with that being a good thing? And now when we look at culture, the reality of it is it's just relationships have become an idol. And so like that's where we are now. It's more than just you know, I want to date this person. It's more than just a parent. Like relationships now, because it's on what we're talking about with culture, because it's all about movies and all this, we have created it to be an idol. And that's where I think we really like dropped the ball, and we don't realize that. And I think that's where we need to get real. We're talking about being real in our conversations and stuff. We need to be real with this has become an idol. So
that is great. Thank you so much, Brooke, for sharing that with us and teaching us about the history and culture of dating. So moving forward, next week, we're actually going to talk about the stages of singleness. And because of all the struggles that Brooke just presented us with when we're talking about history and culture, now there's lots of struggles that we endure because we've been influenced by it. So everybody has a different way of processing through singleness and getting to a place of wholeness and contentment. And Brooke and I are going to share our stories, and hopefully that will be an inspiration to you. So please come back and join us for week 2. It's going to be good, and we cannot wait to dive in with you. If you're watching right now, make sure that you click one of the Zoom links. There should be one for guys and one for girls. And through that, we're going to have some very intentional and personal, deep conversations based on the conversation we just had. So stick around.